Okay, so before I begin, let me just get a quick feel of how many of you have heard of MOOCs? Okay, how many of you have registered for a MOOC? Okay, few people. Alright, how many of you have actually got a certificate? Finished? One person, one or two people? Two, okay, good. Okay, so let me start. So some of you may be wondering what is the context, why are we talking about MOOCs in this session on TechWhip? Okay, one reason for that is that tomorrow you are all going to become 21st century instructors, right? And many of you may go ahead to create your own MOOCs or use MOOCs in your courses and so on and so forth. So we thought that it will be a good idea for you to get some overview of how to create good quality MOOCs or what is there in a good MOOC, what should be there, and maybe some of these ideas you can bring back into your classroom. Okay, so that's the broad reason for having such a topic in the TechWhip workshop. So before I begin, let me just give you a quick introduction to my department. So as Professor Gadre mentioned, Education Technology IIT Bombay is one of two departments in the country right now. We started in 2010 and we have 3 or 4 major projects, okay, 2 of which I have listed here. And what we do is a PhD program largely till now, which had about 15 students have graduated, another 25 students are ongoing. From this year onwards, we started an MTech program. Eventually, we expect to start a 1-year program which is specific for teachers who are interested in incorporating education technology in their classrooms and so on. Okay, so this talk that I am doing today comes under this project that we call as teacher use of education technology. Okay, so under this project, this project has 3 main components. Okay, so there is research, there is development, and there is outreach. So what do these things mean? So under research, what we do is we come up with models. So what I am going to present to you is one such model, okay, of how to create a good MOOC. Then development is basically courses which are based on these models that we create. Okay, so there are several courses which have been created using this learner-centric MOOC model. Courses such as use of ICT by school teachers, then teaching learning of computer science, even a course on networking which is going to become live in NPTEL in the next semester. Okay, and then there is an outreach component wherein we actually offer these courses, do workshops and so on. So the numbers are pretty impressive. I'm not putting them here, but they are of the order of 10,000s of teachers who have actually undergone these courses, close to almost like about 50,000. Okay, so that's the broad context for this project and what we are talking about. Okay, so whenever you see a yellow slide with whatever this red orange title, it means you are going to do the work, not me. Okay, so there are a few of these slides in the talk. Okay, so what we have to do, you have all experienced this active learning session, right? It happened on day 1. Okay, can you name some active learning techniques? Think, pair, share, peer instruction. Okay, each one say one, that's what we are doing now. Okay, several active learning techniques exist. So I have not structured it as a very systematic think, pair, share activity, but we'll just do it as a activity. So what I want you to do is consider a class in the 20th century. 20th century means what? Means when I was a student. Okay, so perhaps not when you were students. Okay, consider a class in the 20th century and then consider a class in the 21st century, which is today, and come up with one difference between these scenarios. Okay, so you need to write this down in your notebook. Okay, one difference between these 2 scenarios with respect to students' access to information and the role of teachers. Okay, some of you seem to have finished. Some of you seem to be looking into your neighbor's notebook to see what they are writing. So let's do it officially. You can copy your neighbor's answer now. Okay, look at what your neighbor has written and see whether you have a similar answer or a different answer. You can talk to your neighbor. Okay, so let's see what are the answers. Let's try to come up with. Okay, yeah, so anybody can speak. Tell me what are the differences. Yeah, okay, resources, okay, resources are limited. Okay, any reason which is other than that? Yeah. What do you mean by teacher centric? What does that mean? Teacher centric means what? Yeah. Ah. Okay. So what you want to say is depend on teachers. Okay. Okay. Anything else? So as we go along, you have to keep finding a reason which is not already there on the slide. So if you have a reason which is different, either your own or with your neighbor that you have discussed. Yeah, go ahead. One way means what? Okay, so it's the same point actually, but yeah, let me write it anyway. Okay, one way. Okay, two way. Two way, or I'll qualify that a little bit and call it multi-way. We'll see in a bit as to what this multi-way means. It's not just two-way, but it's student to student also. Okay, any other reasons? Yeah. ठीक है. Okay. Okay. Yeah, somebody from the back. Hold on, I'll come back to you. Huh. Okay. Okay. Nowadays also there's a lot of chalk and talk, huh? Yeah, a lot of people are adopting, yeah. Yes, much more sources of information. Okay, you had something. So we'll try to move away from terminology. Okay, outcome based education means what? What is the meaning of outcome based education? Tell me. No. Okay. So see, outcome based education, in other words, it was always there. Okay, it's just the terminology was not there. See, outcome based, flipped classroom, or teacher centric, learner centric, these are all words. So unless we know exactly what these words mean, it can sometimes give the wrong impression. You have something to say? Yeah. Interaction increased. Okay. Okay. Okay.
It's like whatever they used to grab the students grab that. But in 21st century, they can confirm that because they have some knowledge before the class, so they can confirm or they can ask.
Yeah, it's a very important point. In the 20th century, students have to grab the info because once the lecture is over, there is no other source. Textbooks are not easily available. Okay, So all the practice or all the homework was left to later. Okay, anybody else? Last chance. Yeah. Ah, good point. We have to debate that also. Okay, less distraction. I'm going to put a question mark. Okay. Huh. Okay. Okay, so I'll put it as no ICT, not enough ICT was there. Huh. Okay, that's a good, okay, fine. I mean, see, all these points are going to apply to you, huh? Okay, so let me put that as the last point. Teacher has to earn the respect. Okay, so teacher has to earn the respect. Okay, last, absolutely last. Huh. Okay. Okay, so teachers have to stay updated. Okay, so teachers have to earn the respect. In that sense, they have to stay updated with the technology, they have to stay updated with the pedagogy, they have to do so many things. A lot of work for you guys, right? I mean, yes. So this, what we are talking about, this learner centric MOOCs and so on, is one way for you to earn the respect of your students. Okay, so let me just summarize. Let's see if we have caught all these differences. So this is the slide that I had made. 20th century class, information was at a premium, right? Did you guys say this? Yes. Okay, so there's no internet, books were expensive, limited access to libraries. So those who had access to information and could transmit it well, basically those who could give good lectures. You know, how many of you have heard of Feynman series, lecture series in physics? Okay, few people only. Oh, very surprising. I think we are all very old. Okay, so they were highly valued. Okay, so what was the student's job? Student's job was mostly to listen, to take notes, and absorb as much information as possible. Okay, this many of you said this. What has changed in the 21st century? What has changed is information is no longer at a premium, right? Like many of you observed, there's a lot of access to information. So it's not enough for a teacher to only transmit the information. Okay. So it's necessary for a teacher to become a facilitator, like many of you said. You have to become a facilitator, you have to use the technology, you have to come up with new ways of keeping your students engaged. Okay, as well as to ensure that they can assimilate the information. So this is the key difference between 50 years ago and today. Okay, is that making sense? Okay, so none of you can go back to doing chalk and talk. Okay, that's ruled out, because then you are in the 20th century. Okay, all right. So let's come to MOOCs, since only some of you have heard about MOOCs. MOOCs basically stands for Massive Open Online Courses. What do? They provide access to information anytime, anywhere. Okay, and there are technology platforms to support the scale. So essentially, in MOOCs also the same thing has happened. The first step was to make the information available. Okay, so if you think about the time of printing, when books became popular, okay, so the first job was to make the books available. Okay, people didn't worry so much about how to make the teaching with the book. Okay, in the same way, the first generation of MOOCs, the key problem was to just make all the content available to large number of people. So what did people do? They basically caught hold of good instructors, captured their classroom lectures and made it available to everybody. Nothing was available to people, so now at least good classroom lectures became available. So that was the idea, and there were technology platforms for supporting this. Okay, how many of you have heard of NPTEL? Okay, large number, thankfully. Good. All right. So then similarly there is edX, IIT Bombay X, okay, whole bunch of such things are there. So what is NPTEL? So NPTEL is one of our own MOOC platforms. Okay, so it is started in actually way back in 2003 where just the content creation used to happen. So a lot of video courses were being recorded, a lot of web courses were created, and since 2014 NPTEL actually started this mechanism of not only giving the course but also providing, doing an exam and providing a certificate. Okay. So many colleges are what are called local chapters of NPTEL. A lot of students take exams. So in the last exam which happened, there were about 1.5 lakh students who wrote the exams. A large fraction of these students are actually teachers, okay, because who want to get new knowledge or who want to get knowledge in a different domain. For example, I have taken an NPTEL course last semester, okay. So I work in education technology and I wanted to know, okay, what really happens in the brain. So I took a course called Neurobiology of Learning. So things like that. So a lot of instructors also take NPTEL courses. So the reason why I am telling you this is that it's a very rich resource for you going forward to learn about topics of your interest before you go to teach your students. Okay. So a lot of disciplines. So this is just a good looking pie chart which says, okay, we cover all the spectrum. A lot of different IITs are creating a lot of content. I'm not so fond of the IIT Bombay small number in that, but never mind. Okay. So it covers all the engineering curricula. Now, if you look at what are the components in an NPTEL course, okay, essentially you find these components. At one point, so I'm starting at 11 o'clock, okay, the pink one. So you find course content and video lectures. So that's one component where the lectures are captured and they are made available. Then you have some assignments which are there. At the end of every week there are assignments. Then there are texts, transcripts, some demos which are put up. Subsequently, occasionally there is live interaction sessions by the faculty, which maybe a couple of once in 2 weeks there could be some live interaction. This is a fairly new feature that we have introduced. Okay, and then there is a discussion forum where students can post their queries, get their doubts answered, and so on. Okay, so we'll come back to this model a bit later and see how to make it more effective. Okay, just to complete the NPTEL story, we have about 1500 plus courses right now. Okay, more than 330 million YouTube views. Okay, some 4.2. So these are all very large numbers. Basic point is like a lot of people in the country are now doing NPTEL in a large way. Okay, is that point clear? Okay, so now let's ask a question. Okay, what's the color of the slide? Okay, yeah, which means you have to do some work, right? So in order to create a MOOC, okay, an instructor creates these lecture videos, provides exercises. It's pretty much like the standard NPTEL model that we are following. Okay, so I happen to be the NPTEL coordinator for IIT Bombay also, so I am allowed to criticize NPTEL. Okay, so instructor creates lecture videos, provides exercises, clarifies queries on the discussion forum, and does assessment. Okay, what has this instructor missed? What are the things that this instructor has not been able to pay attention to or take care of? Again, write a few points. Write a few points and copy later. So think about your class, your students, what you do for your class, your students, and see whether any points are there which you do but this instructor is unable to do. Now you can talk to each other now. After spending a few moments individually, you can talk to each other. Yeah. So let's make it interesting. Professor Gadre will give an award to the pair which comes up with the largest number of items that have been missed. Okay. How many people have managed to find 5 items which have been missed? Okay. One group. 3. 3. Okay. Many people have come up with 3. Okay. Attempt 5. Okay. Now see, once again, this what is happening right now is an illustration of the power of active learning. Okay. Individually, each of us was able to come up with 1 or 2 reasons. Okay. Are you seeing what's happening? Individually, each of us may come up with 1 or 2 reasons, then you get stuck. Then the moment you say, okay, talk to your neighbor, or 2 reasons become 3 reasons, 4 reasons, a little more learning happens. Okay. And now we'll do a share as a group, and then suddenly we'll find that together we know about 10 reasons. Where is this gone? Okay. So same thing. Tell me. What has been missed? Go ahead, anybody. Huh? I started there 1 second. Huh? Huh? Indirect instruction. What has been missed? Interaction. Okay. Okay. Interaction. TPS means what? Group activity. Okay. So, group activities. Okay. Because TPS will take a different form in a MOOC. Yeah. I'll come to you. Huh?
So, the teacher gives a problem to solve to know that what the students learn. They're not able to solve that problem in front of you.
Okay. Real time gauging, real time knowing of students learning. Okay. What else? I am coming slowly. Just hold on. Huh? Real time feedback I have written. Well, each person one turn only. Huh? Focus on weak students. Okay. Focus on. I am going to put weak in quotes. And actually what that means is there are different cohorts. Okay. So there are, just like you say, weak students, there may be interested students, there may be students who want to do more applied work. So it's difficult to focus on different types of students. Okay, I'm moving to this group. Huh? Feedback mechanism means what? Feedback from the learner to the instructor. Okay. Is that the instructor's responsibility? It's the MOOC platform's responsibility. Okay. Somebody else. Huh? Setting of course objectives. That this instructor would have done. Personal guidance. Okay. Personal guidance. Okay. Motivation. Okay. What else? Solution of exercises. Okay. Actually, that can be provided. It can be made available later, but I will put it as immediate solution of. Okay, there is a importance to the word immediate here. Attendance. Okay. Motivation. Attendance. Discipline. ठीक है? Peer learning means what? Student to student interaction. In class assessment. That's a good point. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So nothing, so long lectures are not engaging. Basically, so the instructors not pay. Okay. 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 So yeah, so that is that interaction between students. Okay. Yeah.
First one is that the instructor is unable to gauge the student, then whether he has the capacity to make a lesson.
That is the real time knowing of students learning.
Second is, in a particular course, as an instructor, when we gauge the students in real time, we see that some of the chapters may be tougher.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, instructor cannot gauge
Hmm.
in a book that which chapter he will focus more.
Right. So I'll put it along with real time learning and say that this is adapting the course. Okay. So you want to adapt the course to the current cohort which is there, right? Which if you already recorded, if you already made it available, it's hard to adapt. Last one.
The real-time reaction about the particular topic of student.
Same thing, same point. Yeah. Just go ahead and speak, doesn't matter. I'll unable to clear the doubts immediately. Okay. So all these points, right? Immediate solution of exercises, unable to clear doubts immediately. Okay. Okay, anything else?
So here the student can't interrupt by watching videos, there's no issue.
Okay. Student can go away. Okay. How many? Yeah. Correct, correct. So that is part of your, attendance, etc. Instructor does not know whether the student is watching videos. Yeah, so what we are trying to define is what are these properties of the in-class environment that we want to bring into the MOOC, right?
Only unique examples will be there, no local examples.
It's a very good point. Okay. Unique, let me say no local examples. It's a very good point. See, often you are going to localize it for your students, right? So you are going to, so suppose you are teaching in Somaiya College, you are going to take some example from their environment. Okay. Whereas here it might be just the whatever IIT Bombay instructor giving their own examples. Okay. So how many reasons did we get? About 10, right? So see, this is the power of active learning. Okay. Starting with each person thought I can think of only one reason. You go to talk to each other, you get 2-3 reasons, and now together as a group we have come up with about 10 reasons. Okay. So let's move on. Okay, let me see what were my reasons. Okay, so what's missing is attention to learner motivation. Did you catch that? Yes. Okay. Getting learners to express their reasoning. Did you catch that? Not exactly. Okay, somewhat. Okay. In some way of getting the real time, somebody said real time, we can kind of imagine it to mean that. Okay, opportunities for immediate micro application, immediate application of what they've learned. Did you catch that? Somebody did say that. Not enough feedback, immediate feedback, formative assessment and instant feedback. This multiple times people said that, right? Okay. Explicit activities to foster peer learning. Did you catch that? Yes, you did mention that. Okay. And ensuring learner connect during the MOOC. What does that mean? Ensuring learner connect during the MOOC. Sounds like some great phrase. What does it mean? not exactly distraction, but it's like what somebody said, we have to adapt to what is happening in the MOOC. If you find that, okay, I have released modules for 2 weeks and you find that none of the learners are able to do the assignments, that means you have to change your MOOC a little bit. You have to give some bridge assignment so that learners are able to catch up, right? Or if everybody has gone on, vacation sometimes and nobody has done the assignment, so you have to give some extra time. So all of that is called ensuring learner connect. Okay? Okay, so essentially also one more thing that is missing here is established theories of how people learn. So this is often we are not paying attention to the theory part of it. Okay, so I'll now come to the solution. So essentially traditional MOOCs, if you see, they do this well. They provide anytime anywhere access to information, assessment activities, discussions. Okay. What becomes a little bit of a problem is that people don't look at these things, right? How many people look at all the videos? I mean, not many of you have taken MOOCs, but if you were to take a MOOC, if there is a 40-minute lecture versus a 40-minute movie, which one are you going to see on your laptop, right? I mean, most people are doing that. So, especially when the transcript is provided, what happens in NPTEL, I see that quite often. Okay, what students do is that they look at the assignment. Okay, assignments are MCQ based, so they look at the assignment, they say okay, they find a keyword, they go to the transcript, they do a Control F, search for that keyword, find out what the answer is and answer the assignment. Lot of students do that. Okay, so paying attention to the lectures, how do you get students to pay attention to your lecture in a MOOC? That's a big challenge. Okay, ensuring that they do these exercises and activities, right? So we've also been students and our teachers have also given us a lot of references, right? I mean, if you want to learn more about this, go and read this book. If you want to learn more about that, go and read that book. All of our teachers have said that. Yes or no? How many such references we have looked up? Yeah? Close to zero, right? 1 or 2 maximum. The most enthusiastic people will look up 1 or 2 references. Isn't that? So in a MOOC, again the same problem becomes bigger, right? So you give a list of references, nobody looks at it, what's the use? So you have to find a way to make sure that students are going and referring to that. Why? Because in a classroom, you control the students, you have some control, I don't mean in a bad way, but you have some way of interacting with the students, checking whether they have done that and so on. In a MOOC you don't have that. So you need better strategies to do that. Okay, discussion with peers. So what happens as a result of this is that common MOOC problems may persist. Okay, so now these are very well documented problems. Low student engagement, low participation in discussion forums and low completion rates. Okay, completion rates means the people who have stayed with the MOOC, done all the assignments and graduated. Okay, low participation in discussion forums, again easy to understand. People usually will ask what type of questions? They'll usually ask clarification questions. Okay, is this there in the portion for the exam? Okay. Very rarely there is a rich discussion in the discussion forum, even though the forum is capable of doing that. Okay. So in a MOOC setting, these problems are going to worsen. So what we want to do is, we don't want to mimic your typical classroom. Okay. So if you attempt to mimic the typical classroom when you create a MOOC, okay, the standard 1 hour lecture is not engaging. Lecture plus homework is also not known to be too effective because that immediate feedback is missing. Okay, so I'll just give you a moment to read the takeaway. This is a very important thing. Don't attempt to mimic a typical classroom in your MOOC. Okay, if you say that, okay, this is the way I lecture and I'm going to just put a camera, capture my lecture and make it available as a MOOC, that's a recipe for not being very engaging for students. Okay, why? Because MOOCs have all these challenges. Okay, so I'm not going to go into the detail of this. So this is called the funnel of participation. Okay, basically means that 10,000 people will register for your MOOC. Okay, 7,000 people will actually look at the first lecture. 5,000 people will do the first assignment. then it will go to 3000, finally about 1000 will write the exam. Okay, so 10% is actually the completion rate in a typical MOOC. Okay, so that's called the funnel of participation, and a lot of this happens. So the challenge basically for us, including you, because tomorrow you are going to be people who are going to create MOOCs and so on. So the challenge here is to say, how do you make this better? Okay, so it's not sufficient to focus on the technology features. It's not enough to mimic a typical classroom. Okay, so you need to incorporate these learner-centric approaches. So now you have learnt about learner-centric approaches in a classroom, right? Flipped classroom you have learnt about, PI you have learnt about. How do you do this in a MOOC setting? Okay, so one answer is what we call the learner-centric MOOC model. Okay, so this is developed at IIT Bombay, and just as the MOOC has, a typical MOOC has 4 parts, what we have done is we have tried to just add small things into these 4 parts to ensure that the MOOC actually becomes much more engaging and much more meaningful to students. Okay, so what I will do is we'll just go through each of these one by one instead of trying to inundate you with all the information. Okay, this slide actually I'm going to skip talking about classroom scenarios, and we'll just talk about the correspondence. We'll come back to this slide a little bit later. So essentially what we are saying is, instead of simply doing lectures, you can convert them into what are called learning dialogues. Okay, I'll do this one by one. So the first point is what's called a learning dialogue. Okay, so what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of a MOOC? Video lecture, right? The first thing that comes to your mind when you think of a MOOC is a video lecture. And now we know that a video lecture of 1 hour is not going to be watched by anyone. Okay, so we say, okay, let's shrink the video lecture. Let's make it 15 minutes. Okay, it turns out even a 15-minute video lecture is not engaging to students because there is no connect. Okay, so there is data that if you say, okay, 15-minute video lecture, then students go away after 2 minutes. Okay, if you say 1 hour video lecture, students still go away after 2 minutes. Okay, so that's basically the data, that's what the data is showing. Okay, so what do you do? So basically this 2 minutes seems to be some magic number, right? We have to do something at the 2-minute mark to ensure that we can keep the students. Okay, so the idea here is a very simple idea. So what it says is that instead of just doing content followed by content followed by content, put a question in between. Okay, so that's called a reflection spot. Okay, so however short your video may be, try to introduce one question in between. Okay, what it's mimicking is basically some opportunity for the learner to interact or the learner to do something active. Okay, so here's an example. I think the web link will probably not work. So it's sort of like the question that I asked you earlier, right? I mean, what has this instructor missed? Some question like that. So this was a MOOC that we were doing for teachers. Now, which teacher students are likely to create effective presentations? Maybe it was on, PPT or something. And then you ask a simple question. So this idea is called a reflection spot. Okay. So in the middle of your video lecture, you pause, you ask a reflection spot question. Okay. Can you do something with the answer that students give? So it's a MOOC, it's asynchronous. You can capture the data, yes. You can capture the data, you can push it to discussion forums, that's a little bit different. Okay, pushing it to discussion forum, then it will become bigger thing. This is a very simple thing, which teacher students are likely to create effective presentations, A or B. Okay, something like that, it's a true or false. Okay, or what do you think, which of this is going to work? So what you have to do after this is in the content that follows. Okay, so in the content that follows, you have to think of, okay, some students may have said A, because students mostly think that this is the effective way. Okay, and you have to address that. All of us can do that. As instructors, we all know what are the likely answers which students will give, right? If you have spent long enough. Okay, So you know, okay, students are likely to give this answer, or students are likely to give that answer, or students are likely to give that answer. So what you do is, in the content that follows the reflection spot, you address that. You say, okay, some of you may have thought that it is teacher A, but actually you know it's not teacher A because blah 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 blah. Okay. So then what happens is the student feels, okay, my answer has been addressed by the instructor. Okay. So that's the main idea, and there's a lot of research evidence. So we have done some studies ourselves also. So a lot of research evidence which shows that the retention rate and the completion rate also has increased. Okay, so I am not going to go into details of this research takeaways. So the basic point to make here is that you want to include reflection spots in videos. That's the main point. The reflection spot should be connected to the immediately preceding content. Learners should get an opportunity to express their ideas, and the content after the reflection spot should address it. Okay, all of this sounds like theory, right? I talked a lot of theory. So now let's do some activity. Okay. So how will you incorporate this idea? So there is a concept. What is the concept? Do some talking, do some reflection spot, and do some more talking. How will you take this idea and put it into your own classroom? Okay, tomorrow you are going to teach a course, right? Everybody is been assigned a course for the next semester. Okay, how will you incorporate this idea in your next semester's course? Again, 1 minute, talk to each other, and then we'll list down some ways. Okay, how will you do that? It's very simple actually. Bolo. Okay, so we give them some exercise, take options from them and tell what is the correct option. What's the technical term for this? Peer instruction. Okay, so you do a PI question. Okay, so basic point I am trying to make here is, after you leave from this workshop, none of you should go into a classroom and keep lecturing and keep lecturing and keep lecturing. Okay, then what will happen? You will put all your students to sleep. Okay, so after every few minutes, do some activity, have one slide. See, that's why we are using color. Okay, have a slide which tells the students, okay, abhi kuch karna hai, right? Have some activity in the slide, make them do something. So that's the simplest way. So when you take the concept of an LED, what it essentially means is, don't go on and on, break it at some point, first thing. Second thing is, get some answers from the students. The moment I give an answer, see, even if you take the previous activity, how many people wanted to keep on giving their answer even after I said last option, last chance? Okay, there's so many people want to keep giving their answer. That's the idea. Okay, that's how you connect with your learners. Is that making sense? Okay, so don't go back and just do lectures. Insert some reflection spots into your lecture. Maybe even if you don't do a full PI question, like right now, I'm not doing this as a full PI or a full TPS. I'm just pausing, giving you a chance to reflect, getting some responses and moving on. Does that make sense? That's sort of principle number 1. The second principle is what is called learning by doing. Okay, learning by doing is what we normally encounter as exercises, okay, homework. There's a slight difference from homework to these exercises. Okay, so the difference is that what you see here as customized, okay, it's not showing up here, okay, what you see at the bottom as customized constructive feedback. Okay, so the students do the activities and they get immediate feedback. Okay, how will you implement this in the classroom? So now you know, for every element I am going to ask you this question: how will you implement this in the classroom? Choose. choose small questions, very good, and do quizzes. Yes, one more point I am waiting for. Huh? Cross check by the peers. Yes, you can do it, cross check by the peers. Do it immediately. Okay, so don't say that, okay, I will finish my lecture today. At the end of this week, you will get a worksheet which you take home and you do your practice. Okay, that is known to be not very useful. Okay, it's useful for highly motivated students, which perhaps you are. Okay, but for the general students, what is important is, okay, you do some small thing, immediately give an activity, just like we have been doing here. Immediately you have an activity, you say, okay, here is a problem, solve this problem right now. Okay, and then you can have peers to check it and so on. Okay, so let me show you an example from IIT Bombay. So this was, for example, we were teaching a course on how to do flipped classroom. Okay, I think the next session is on flipped classrooms, right? Bhaskar will probably talk about that. Okay, so now you might think that it's very difficult to assess, right? So look at the activity. It says design a flipped classroom for a topic in your course. Now suppose I have given this activity to all of you. Yeah? All of you are going to give me the answers. How do I assess? And if you think of a MOOC, the problem becomes much bigger, right? I have 10 times more number of students when I do this in a MOOC. How do you do the assessment? So there is a very easy way of doing that, which is called peer assessment. Okay, so you create rubrics. Rubrics basically means you can understand it as marking scheme, right? So that's the typical terminology which is used. Like you can think of it as a marking scheme. So you have a marking scheme and you make that marking scheme public and you can just have peers grade each others. Okay, as long as there is no total credit for the course, it works. So essentially the point I am making here is that you want to give learning by doing activities immediately after the content. Okay. Once again, there is a lot of research evidence which supports the fact that doing learning by doing activities immediately after the video or the learning dialogue is very useful, and we have similar numbers from our own research also. Okay, so what's the takeaway here? Intersperse videos with learning by doing activities. Now if you translate it into the classroom language, what does it become? Yeah, so it becomes a combined lecture plus practical. Okay, so if you want to go away from this session with one point only, right? The point that I want to make is don't simply just do lectures. Okay, do reflection spots, bring some practical into it, do some active learning. Any of these strategies if you use, it will increase the engagement of your students. A lot of learning will happen. Okay, so intersperse videos with learning by doing activities. In a classroom setting, it means that don't lecture for the entire 1 hour. Do something, insert a PI question, insert a TPS question, let there be some activity. Okay, and what's also important is to provide customized constructive feedback. Okay, customized feedback in a PI question is very easy to do because there are whatever 3-4 options, and for each option you have the corresponding feedback as to why this option is right, what should be done in order to get to the correct answer, and so on. Is that making sense? Okay. So if that's making sense, we'll skip this activity. Okay. How to apply concepts of LBD in the classroom? I think we all know it's fairly straightforward. Next one is a little interesting. Okay. This one is the references. This is called learning extension trajectories. Okay, and many of you also mentioned, right? Okay, in a MOOC there will be different type of learners. Okay, even in a classroom there are different types of learners. Okay, let's take this classroom. There are some of you who are here because you want to learn the math. There are some of you who are here who want to just get a general idea of what it is. Okay, there are some of you who are here who want to see IIT mein kya hota hai. Okay, a lot of such things are there and it's all valid. There's nothing wrong. Okay, all these motivations. Some of you might be here to say, okay, maybe I want to do a PhD later. Okay, some of you may want to do something else. Some of you may want to see what are the applications of this topic that I am learning. Okay, now in a classroom itself there are such diverse motivations. So in a MOOC, that actually becomes much more. Okay. So what is required is to be able to cater to these different learners. Okay. How do you cater to them? By giving them different resources. Okay. This is nothing but the list of references at the end of the chapter. Okay, that we are all familiar with and none of us look at. So how do you get learners to see that? How do we do that? So the question is that you can give a list of references. Okay, if you want to know more about applications, here is a list of references. If you want to know more about, the maths behind it, here is a list of books. You can look at that, right? Often learners are not going to go and look at it by themselves, right? How do you make them go and look at it? Ask a question, yeah? By giving assignments from these. Okay, so you can give some marks for that. So what you can do, that's essentially what this slide is saying. Okay, first of all, have a variety of resources. Okay, so don't give only text to everybody. Some people may want to watch a video, some people may want to do an activity and figure out. So once you understand that, okay, these are the types of learners in my classroom or in my MOOC, have a variety of resources for them. Say, okay, this resource, if you are more interested in applications, go and look at this. If you are more interested in theory, go and look at that. And that's not enough. What you have to do is, you close the loop, and that's what you see at the bottom, called an assimilation quiz. Okay, it's a very small quiz. It's sort of just to see, have you seen the resource at all? Okay, for example, let's say this video that is being shot here itself is created into such a resource. Okay, one question you can ask, and you make this video available to your students and say, okay, look at this video and come. Okay, one question you can ask is that how many times did Sridhar Iyer make people do an activity? Okay, that question can be answered only if person has seen the video. Okay, very simple question. If you have seen the video, it's a very simple question to answer, right? You give 1 mark for that. It's as simple as that, and what we have found is that this is very effective. Okay, so here is an example that we have done. That this is again about flipped classroom. Okay, how to do flipped classroom and so on. So you learn more about that, and then there is a corresponding assimilation quiz where what is the instructor doing in that. So this question can be answered only if the person has watched the video. Okay, so in the next session when you learn about flipped classrooms, again this will be a very useful thing for you to take away. Okay, often the problem with a flipped classroom is students don't watch the video. So what you do is assign the flipped classroom video for them to watch. As soon as they come into class, you ask a question like this. Okay, saying that, okay, only if you have watched the video you will be able to answer this. This is not a conceptual question. Okay, it's not a knowledge question, it's not an apply level question. It's a simple recall level question as to what was there in the video. Okay, and there's a lot of evidence which shows that even such simple ideas work. So I'm going to skip the research part and come back to the takeaway from LXTs. Okay, what is the takeaway here? You want to cater to diverse learners and diverse learning levels, provide resources to increase depth and breadth, and close the loop with an assimilation quiz. So how will you apply the concepts of an LXT in a classroom? Providing lecture notes, that's one type. Lecture notes is one type. And then providing links to videos, other videos, right? I mean, so many types of resources are there. Then providing links to simulations. Okay, so if you are talking about mathematical concept, okay, so you might want to provide links to simulations. Okay, go and try out this experiment. Okay, some people may want that. So providing all these links, is it enough to just provide the link? No. What do you have to do? Give a quiz. Okay, complete the loop by giving a very low intensity assimilation quiz after that. Okay, the last one, it's called learning experience interactions, it should be. Okay, so there's a error in the slide, doesn't matter. Yeah, so this again, this is now a very interesting idea. Now let's go back to the context of a MOOC. Okay, if there's a discussion forum, what happens usually is that people don't discuss, right? They only ask doubts and some TA will answer the doubt and that's the end of it, right? Even in your class, no, when you leave the class, okay, what happens? Some students will come behind you, right? What is the type of questions that you get when you leave the class? So when I leave the class now, the same thing is going to happen, right? So a lot of clarification questions will come, right? A lot of people ask clarification questions which actually end right there. Or some logistics questions will come. Oh, is this there in the exam? Okay, is this there? When is the next class? Those kind of questions come. So what you want to do is you want to ensure that a lot of more deeper discussion happens. How to do that? What we have found is a very simple idea. The simple idea is a focus question. Okay. So the moment you have a focus question, what is a focus question? A question like what I asked earlier. Okay, what has this instructor missed in a MOOC? Okay, so when you ask a question which has a very focus, which elicits different responses from different students, okay, then you find that the discussion becomes very engaging and very rich. Okay, so right now it may sound very abstract to you because you have not experienced it fully yourself, but you just stay with the idea that in order for discussions to be effective, do a focus question. So what we do, so here's an example from IIT Bombay X. So what we do is we give a focus question saying that you have designed active learning activity. Write down what challenges you have faced while designing these activities. Okay, so that's the focus question. Now imagine I ask this question in the classroom. Okay, so each of you will have some answers to the question, and then again you close the loop by saying that, yeah, here's the focus question, here is what they have to do, go to the discussion forum and post, and then there is a small reflection quiz at the end of it, which basically again is a very simple thing. It says, okay, how many people's posts did you read? What was the most common difficulty that you found people saying? Yeah, so all these quizzes, their job is only to ensure that learners go and see those resources or learners go to the discussion forum and post. So once again there is a lot of evidence which shows that the idea of a focus question is very effective. So I am not going to go into that. So the key point to take away from here is that through learner experience interactions, we leverage the peer learning. Okay, anchor discussions around focus questions and close the loop with a reflection quiz. Now if you try to look at the difference between a classroom and a MOOC setting, okay, this is actually the biggest difference. Okay, because in a MOOC you get a lot of diverse learners. However much you may say that, okay, this is only for third year undergraduate students, you will find people from industry who have joined the MOOC, you will find teachers who are there in the MOOC, you will find people who are just randomly interested. There are people who just like taking MOOCs and giving exams and creating a portfolio. You will find all sorts of learners in your MOOC. Okay, so as an instructor, you have two options. Okay, one option is, one option is ignore them. Okay, do whatever you are doing anyway. That's a bad option. Okay, why? Because you can utilize them instead of simply ignoring. Many instructors do that. They say, okay, I am doing this for third year undergraduate students, I am going to ignore. If you are not a third year undergraduate student, I am not talking to you in a MOOC. Okay, the other thing you can do is something like this. You can leverage the peer learning. So you can realize that, oh, there are industry people in my MOOC. Let me create a focus question which makes these industry people respond as to how they are applying this concept that I am doing in their job. Okay, the moment you do that, a lot of good answers start coming. Okay, and then the third year undergraduate students in your class, they also wake up because they find, acha, this is useful in the industry. Okay, they become more attentive in your course. Okay, so a lot of such things happen which the MOOC very naturally supports, which a classroom cannot. Okay, in a classroom what we have to do? You have to invite a guest lecturer, right? You have to say, okay, you have to find some friend in the industry, you have to say, Arey, aajao, come, do one session on data structures. What does Google do? So when I was teaching data structures, so I actually did that. So I had a friend from Google come down and talk about, how Google manages its data structures. Immediately it's interesting to my students, right? If I say, okay, data structures, arrays, trees, B trees, this, that and all, everybody is gone to sleep. The moment the Google guy comes, says pretty much the same thing, right? Everybody is awake. So now this guest lecture business is very difficult to orchestrate in a classroom, right? You have to manage the schedule, you have to see when to put that person, is the person available, you have to have contacts, all of that. In a MOOC, it happens naturally. They are already there in your MOOC as learners. Use them as guest lecturers. Okay, so that's what the LXI does. Okay, so let me skip this also. We won't apply the concept of an LXI in a classroom. We've done that. Orchestration is again something, even though this slide looks a little complicated, it's something that you're all familiar with in a classroom. It basically means respond to what is happening in the class. If you find that students are struggling, you have to change the content, you have to give a new example. Now this is not very easy in a MOOC, but it's very easy in a classroom. Okay, so let me skip on orchestration. Okay, so again there's a lot of evidence and so on. This is not really relevant here. So, okay, so let me come to some closing remarks. Okay, so all these things that I talked about, there's actually a MOOC on this. Okay, so it's a 4-week MOOC. This is running on NPTEL. Okay, so if you find that, okay, this was interesting or halfway interesting, what you can do is you can register for this MOOC. So this is going to start in the July semester. Okay, the name of the MOOC itself is Designing Learner-Centric MOOCs. I am one of the instructors of that MOOC. Okay, starts July, ends August. There's an exam in September. So I hope to see some of you at least take this exam. So those of you who are, for example, if your college has got this Swayam course creation mandate, okay, and if your college says that, okay, you need to start creating MOOCs, then this course is actually mandatory for you. Okay, so it's a good idea to take this course and keep it, so that in case your college asks you to create a MOOC, you can say, yeah, I am sort of certified MOOC creator. Alright? Okay. Okay, so what do we understand at the end? In the end, what we understand is that a MOOC is not simply some lecture videos which are made available to public. Okay, it's a balanced combination of learning activities, and one way of doing that is to use the LCM model. And now when we come back to the LCM model, what we find is that this also works in classrooms, right? We have just seen that even in a classroom the same ideas can be used. So what does the model consist of? Consists of learning dialogues, which basically means introduce reflection spots into your lectures. Okay, consists of learning by doing, which means give some questions in the class, not simply out of class. Okay, learning extension trajectories, which means make resources, diverse resources available to learners, and have some assimilation quiz at the end of it. Again, it can be done in a classroom. Okay, and the last one is learner experience interaction, where you have a focus question and you say, okay, those of you. So in a classroom, it's a little difficult. I'm not sure. It depends upon the topic. Okay, but if you say, for example, networking, I teach networking. If you take networking, once again, there's a lot of learner experience interaction that's possible because people come from different parts of the country. Okay, so you can ask a question like, okay, what is the typical download time that you see when you go home? Okay, and then there is a discussion which can be created around, okay, what are the different types of services that are provided by different ISPs, what is the concept of quality of service, and so on. Okay, alright, I think that's it. So this particular talk is also available, I think you will get it, I have given it, and there are other such talks also on my website, you can take a look at them. Okay. Lunch. Any quick? Okay.
We have been told that it is mandatory to include NPTEL discussing about coursework. So, how and when? How?
Okay, this is a very good question. Everybody pay attention. This side. So he's asked a very important question. We have been told it's mandatory to include NPTEL lectures in your classes. Okay, if this happens, yeah, I mean there is a separate talk on that actually on my website. So there's a talk called "Are Teachers Becoming Redundant?" Okay, because NPTEL lectures are there everywhere. So is it that there's going to be only one authoritative professor teaching that subject and nobody else needs to teach that subject? Okay, so what you can do, but it's a very good point, right? So let's take, for example, I don't know, signals and systems, since Professor Gadre is here. Okay, his course on signals and systems is available. Okay, now you are also teaching signals and systems. Okay, who's going to listen to you? Nobody, right? His course is already there. Now what do you do as an instructor? Okay, what you have to do is you have to contextualize. Okay, he is teaching signals and systems to his class, which is different from your class. Okay, that's the first thing you have to remember. So as an instructor, when you go into the class, you have to be sure that you know your class. Some third person, however good they may be, they don't know your class. So you have to contextualize it for your own students. Okay, what is one way of contextualizing? So somebody did that. Okay, so for one of our courses, what that faculty member did was very simple. He paused the video, so the video is playing, he paused the video and he translated the entire thing into Gujarati. Okay, contextualized for their students. That's a very simple way. It was in Gujarat. Okay, so all he did was periodically pause the video and translate the whole thing into Gujarati, made it accessible to their learners. That's one thing that you can do. Okay, another thing that you can do is you can design some bridge activities. Okay, so when Professor Gadre teaches signals and system, he is making some assumptions about what the learners already know. Okay, your learners may not know it. He cannot create activities for your learners. You create the activity. So you say, okay, ये थोड़ा high level का है, so we will create a bridge activity. Okay, we create some simpler activities so that learners can catch up. Okay, that's the way you incorporate NPTEL into your own course. Okay, don't just play it. Then you lose the audience. Then they might as well see it at home, right? So you bring all these ideas of activities, create some PI questions, make sure that they've understood, play portions of the video, then do an activity, play some other portions of the video. That's the way to incorporate NPTEL in your own course. Okay, that's a very quick answer, but that's the gist of it. Okay, one more question. Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, in a classroom you can identify them, right? And what do you do in a classroom? Sometimes repeat the thing, sometimes you ask questions, sometimes you say, okay, वो लोग आप लोग बात कर रहे हो यहाँ मेरा answer दे दो, right? And then suddenly those two guys are like एकदम frozen and wondering what's going on. Okay, and then next lecture they won't be there, right? Because they'll say, okay, this guy is creating so much trouble. So don't do that. In a classroom, a very simple way of doing it in a classroom is to do the PI questions, right? PI questions, what does it ensure? See, look at this particular class, okay? 12:45 ho raha hai, more than 1 hour I've been talking. There really is nobody sleeping, right? It's difficult to sleep in an active learning class because your neighbor keeps waking you up, right? I don't have to wake you up, right? The moment I say talk to your neighbor is going to wake you up. That is what is going to happen, right? That is an active learning class. So in a classroom, when you make people talk to each other, they will talk. So now coming back to the MOOC, right? How do we make this happen? You have to ensure that students talk to each other. Okay, how do you make them talk to each other? Create a focus question, make them respond. See, if you attempt to get everybody to talk, that is not a realistic goal, okay. So even in this classroom, I am not trying to make you talk to everybody else in the class. I am only making you talk to the neighbor. Same idea you use in the MOOC. Okay, so you say that, okay, you create an activity and you say, okay, post your answer to this question. Fine, that I have to do. Then you say, read 3 other people's answers and comment on them. The moment I do that, I have interacted with at least 3 other students in the MOOC. That much goal is sufficient. Now, if each student is interacting with 3 other students, there is enough discussion that happens in the MOOC. Even after that, if somebody doesn't participate, then you leave it. Okay? There are a lot of people who need not participate. Okay? That's also a valid choice. But you have facilitated participation. That's all. Done? Okay. Thank you very much.